Well, that changes everything. Now I don't know what to say.
I am going to get started. So we have a really interesting group this week. I always joke that you never know what you're going to get because everybody's got a little bit of a different view of things. And I think this is the perfect example of what an f-upnight's about. You get a really big contrast, but it's also how fast things can go upside down and backwards, worse than if I were to fly a plane with Brad, when you underestimate others. And so I wanted to just thank our great speakers today. There are great contrast in different types of people and how they dealt with these things. I have on one side, I have Doug Wendt, and I'll let him introduce himself in a second. On the other side, I have Brigham Bechtel, very different backgrounds. Let's start with Doug, and if you could give us a couple minutes on your thing, and then after that, Brigham, a couple minutes, and then we can start from there with our different talks. So why don't you start, Doug, with a little short synopsis of your background. Doug is not on yet. Why don't we start with Brigham then?
Oh, well, let me give Doug's background. No. Hi, my name is Brigham Bechtel, and I'm a veteran of the Central Intelligence Agency. I spent 27 years there. Before that, I was a member of the intelligence community as a sailor, as a Navy officer, and before that, an enlisted man, where I was a Russian linguist and rode submarines. And since I retired in 2017, have been part of corporate America in one form or fashion or another. And very pleased to be joining you all tonight. And thanks, Brigitte, for having me.
And all right.
Hello. I just had to go through this hoop and that hoop and the other hoop, and here I am. So hello, everybody.
You ready to go, Doug? You give us a couple minutes on your background and then step into your story.
Which one?
Something, anything that goes like to the 10 minutes one and does not require you to explain like any level of stuff that's going to have legal involved.
You got it. Understood. Good evening, everybody. Hello. let me turn off my commercial banner and go real world here. So just give me a second. Dun, da, da, da. There you go. Not quite as exciting. There's the extra printer. I can't figure out where to plug in. So how's everybody doing tonight? Awesome. Everyone's doing the thumbs up. Thank you. I was just doing the thumbs up. I just finished another call. Happy to join everybody. So my name's Doug. I'm honored to be here. I've known Brigitte and Scott for quite some time. Actually, Brigitte and I went to college together, talk about the mother of all F-ups. But anyway, we both survived the business of college. I have no idea how. I'm talking to you from New York City. So when I'm not in DC, I'm in New York. When I'm not in New York, I'm in DC. I run a company, or I should say the company runs me. So for the last 10 years, actually more than that. Oh my gosh. Okay. I wanted to pretend it's only been 10 years. It's actually been almost 15 years. I have been run by a business that I full-heartedly founded because I thought that being an entrepreneur would release me from all the pains and stresses of life as an employee. Oh man. So yes. So I run a company called One Partners, appropriately named. And what we do in a nutshell is we do a lot of sales and marketing consulting with companies, helping them figure out how to make money, which is funny, right? Because the first thing that they ask is, how are you doing making money? And sometimes we're doing great. And sometimes we're learning that the idea that we had didn't work. So I like to say that, you know, the real purpose of being an entrepreneur is to learn how not to do business constantly. If you're not making mistakes, if you're not, can we actually say the F word? Or are we supposed to just say F?
You can say the F word. That's
okay.
part of this. You live life unscripted.
Life on the edge. Holy smokes, you know? So what's this perfect since what? Meetup was bought by the We Company and Adam Newman, of course, the only thing he knew how to say was swear words. So I think it's appropriate that we're throwing swear words around through a meetup group. That's perfect, perfectly done. Okay, so I was supposed to prepare a story about a mother of all fuck ups that involves me not understanding or trusting what other people can bring to the table, right? Okay, I'm supposed to choose just one. All right, I'll try to choose just one. That is hard. By the way, the other joke is that before I ran my company, I ran an economic development agency where I used to say that my job was to make sure everybody else got rich, helping other people be successful in business. So that's when I decided to start my own. I'm still trying to figure out the get rich part. So the biggest challenge that I have, which I'm sure a lot of you, if you're entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs have, is knowing when you can trust other people. Trust is a very, very, very dangerous thing. And the only thing more dangerous than being over trusting is being under trusting. So the life lesson, I'm getting to the punchline first, right? I'm telling the whole story backwards. The whole point, the moral of the story is, yes, it's good to be cautious, of course. Okay. But being under trusting will screw you up infinitely more than being over trusting. Being over trusting you can learn from. Being under trusting just makes you feel like a moron. So one of the things that we do in our company is we implement a lot of software, marketing software, sales software, CRM software. And I used to think I was the only person who really understood how to do that correctly. Can you see where this is going? Okay. And that's half of our business is doing that kind of work. And to give you an idea, we're just around $1 million a year right now. And actually next year, I hope, fingers crossed, we'll, by the end of this year, I'm hoping to double that. So I've got big plans. But last year, what was fascinating to me is we had a lot of business come our way because during the COVID year, everybody was like, shit, I can't do things the way I've been doing it. And we actually had a great idea that came from one of my salespeople. When the COVID crisis first began, our lead salesperson went to the New York Times website and there was a map of the states and they were color coded based on the level of outbreak in each state. Because of course, being here in New York, when the whole thing started, we were in the red. I mean, our entire prospect base went to 0 in a week, okay? Because everything just shut down. So then we started calling the states that were still green. Basically, we're just following the people who weren't yet affected, marching across the country and then back to the middle and so forth. And that actually worked well, except that my ego was like, dude, I'm the guy who understands how to implement the CRM software. I got this. Okay. So then we got a big opportunity and we got a great, great client actually on the West Coast. And I was really excited. And a couple of my team members were like, look, I know this is a big project, but let me run this. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm like, young Padawan, just wait. Just wait. You have to learn from the master first. Okay. I didn't think I was being that arrogant at the time, but believe me, I was totally, absolutely that asinine. I just, looking in the mirror, I thought I was being different. Self-delusion is another great trait of entrepreneurs, which we can use for good, by the way, because when everything says you're screwed, we can find a way to say tomorrow's going to be an awesome sales day, but it has a dark side. And this was the dark side. Boy, was I so confident. I was excited on this project. By the way, this was for us a huge project. It was like $50,000 to $60,000 in professional services, which for some of you might be a drop in the bucket if you're in large federal contracts. But for us as a small company, that was like gigantic. Okay. And I was like, I have this, I've got the team, but I'm just going to let you guys just follow me. I'm the scout leader. Okay. You'll build a campsite and make a fire when I tell you to. Don't pull out the spam yet. We're not ready for the spam. Okay. Why are you pulling out the spam? Well, they were pulling out the spam because they were right. So the customer, a couple people in the customer team weren't really communicating fully with me. Maybe they were intimidated. Maybe they weren't interested in working with the CEO. An important thing in professional services is the personality match. A guy I learned an enormous amount from in the world of business used to routinely pull himself out of client engagements when he felt that the match wasn't there. When he was like, you know what? I'm really passionate about this, but my energy level, my style, my personality on the what am I trying to say? Myers-Briggs. okay, isn't going to work for this client. And he would literally plan like that. And he didn't mind pulling himself out. I knew that intellectually. I totally missed it emotionally. I'm an EMTJ. Who the hell doesn't want to work under an EMTJ? And of course, by the way, the phrase there is everyone's supposed to work under the ENTJ, right? Because we know what needs to be done. You know, as I used to say, and still do, only jokingly, I hope, but probably more than jokingly, everybody do what I say and no one gets hurt, right? So I was uber confident. And we get into the engagement, and it was a very intuitive, more not my style team. And the CEO had handed the project to middle management, which completely within her rights to do. And I was just not getting the full story, and my team members were getting feedback. We're uncomfortable with how this is going, blah, 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 blah. Now, I may have had the perfect answer. Like I had the architecture, I had the flow charts, I had the whole thing mapped out. Dude, I'm going to get you to solve your business problem. Just be quiet and listen to me and it'll all work out. Okay. Well, the client team ended up quietly, but very firmly revolting. And the CEO gave me a call. I guess technically it was a Zoom call. So he asked for a meeting. So this is post-COVID mindset, right? So he emails me and says, like, we need to talk. And of course I'm like, sure, let's talk. Let's talk about how awesome this is going. I'm so excited. Let's talk. Okay. And he's like, we've decided to take a different direction. We're canceling our contract. I'll pay you for the portion that you've done, but that's it. Why? My team thinks you're an asshole. Oh, shit. They like working with your staff, but they're not confident your staff knows enough. And your staff seems to only follow your direction. So they're not confident that, that your team could do it without you, and they really don't want to work with you. Oh, wow. Yep. So that's how I threw away a lot of money in a very important project. And I totally mother of all fucked that up because I didn't trust my team. And I didn't even realize I wasn't trusting my team. I thought I was just leading. Leading is a very dangerous term because when you're this kind of personality, right, a very assertive personality, everything feels like leading. Being a total jackass feels like leadership in the moment. I'm not being a jackass, I'm leading, I'm being forthright. No, I'm not reading the room. I'm not paying attention to my team. I'm not paying attention to my client. I lost the whole project and was embarrassed in front of my team, but I learned a valuable lesson. Here we are, the better part, actually just about a year later, and I don't get involved in the implementations at all. Now, some of them still go south. I have one right now that I'm unnerved about. And the CEO actually wrote to me and said, we miss you in the meetings. But you know what? He has to get used to the fact that he has to trust my team too. That's the other hard thing about being the owner is often you are communicating as a peer with other owners and C-level people. And if you let that become too much of a thing, they'll never listen to your team. So I have to let my team lead or the business is toast. It doesn't matter if we know what the hell we're doing. All that matters is that the client trusts us. And that required me to take a huge step back, eat some humble pie, completely fuck up my forecast and go, oh shit, why am I doing this? Why am I an entrepreneur? I can't get this shit right. 15 years of doing it, I'm still fucking up. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it. I'm excited to hear about your fuck ups. I hope I gave you a good opening.
Very nice, very nice. I think that's a great start, especially with trust. We had that conversation earlier this week with a conversation that Brad was leaving, and that was a key thing that somebody said was like, how do I negotiate when I can't really trust on the other side?
Right.
And both trusting yourself and trusting others is really, really hard to do. And I'm gonna do you want to take questions now, or do we want to wait for Brigham's conversation first and then take them afterwards? What are you guys' comfort zone there?
You tell us, Brigade, it's your show.
That's right. I'm with Brigham.
Okay, so I'd like to actually, since we're talking about trust, because I think Brigham's job is big on trust too, and although he may talk on something else completely different, I'd like to segue into Brigham next, and then as you guys bring in commentary and thoughts, we'll wait after both the gentlemen are done, and then we'll talk after that. So Brigham, why don't you take it from here?
Actually,
Sure. So
1 minute, Brigham, can I interrupt 1 second? So folks are putting stuff in the chat and I don't want to slow us down or call it out, but if folks don't have their chat open, can I just recommend it? Because it's, you know, it's a good side kind of adding to Brigham and Doug's discussion. So sorry to interrupt you, Brigham.
no, not at all. Not a problem at all. So thank you very much for having me and giving me an opportunity to talk about my failures. So,
Just don't ask Scott about pink codes and we'll be fine.
There we go. I tried to formalize my thoughts a little bit about this and talk about, you know, underestimating where it catches us off guard. And of course, the three areas I think we tend to underestimate, and by the way, the yin to this yang is overestimate, and the difference between lacking confidence is being overconfident, as Doug pointed out. We tend to underestimate ourselves. We tend to underestimate situations and environments we find ourselves in. And then the worst one is when we underestimate others. And then I broke down who those others are. And we tend to underestimate colleagues, competitors, adversaries, and most importantly, as leaders, I think we underestimate our subordinates. And my story has to do with underestimating subordinates and the real world consequences of that. And so in my background as a chief in the agency, I've been posted to areas of the world that are not as much fun as others. And it requires you to take risks to do your job and to go places. And it requires a lot of moving parts to safely move human beings into dangerous environments and then bring them safely back. And you try to be very clear in your instructions about what to accomplish in those environments. And you try to be very specific in the goals. But what you should also plan in is flexibility and understanding that you're dealing with human beings. And one of the ways that you can screw that up, as I did in this story, is I was dealing with some very junior officers that I needed to send someplace where they would go without me, with a great deal of security and a great deal of protection. And those moving parts included elements of the US military and State Department and others. And because the longer you are on the X, as we say, the longer you are in a dangerous area, the more likely it is that bad things will happen to you. So in my effort to ensure that I didn't put my people in a bad situation for too long, I gave these young officers who are very capable and well-trained and know things I don't know, in fact. I gave them very specific and limited instructions, thinking that what I was going to be doing was sending them in harm's way, giving them everything they needed to accomplish their mission, and pulling them back to safety. What I failed to account for was initiative and flexibility and judgment. And I sent them to a place to accomplish a mission, and they did it beautifully. And they came back and told me in their write-ups and in their back briefs about their successful trip, and then told me about this amazing opportunity they had to accomplish another goal that we owned. There they could have, because the opportunity arose, could have done something wonderful for America's national security under very arduous conditions. They could have knocked out two birds with one stone. And as they told me about this amazing opportunity, I was salivating. I was just beside myself with joy that we had come to this possible victory for America. And I said, so what did you do? And they said, we came home because you didn't tell us we could do it. You told us only to do this and to do it this way and to do it with these means. So when we had the opportunity, we asked ourselves, because we're new and young and we're not sure, and you're the wise old chief who's supposed to tell us what to do, we didn't do it. Which meant, and here's where it gets really bad, we would have to go back out and risk those people's lives again. And we would have to risk resources and people and time, the loss of time. The one element you can never, ever recover was lost. And all because I had underestimated their training, their courage, their intelligence, and their wisdom. I underestimated the very people I was leading, and therefore America lost an opportunity. So that's one that actually we were able to recover from, but it still haunts me because of the loss of time. How else I could have devoted that time, how else I could have made better use of that time, how else I could have safeguarded those people while still accomplishing the mission, if only I had given them the freedom to do what they were actually capable of doing. I had underestimated their capabilities and their courage. And that's a huge failing in my part. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, Your Honor.
Wow, that was really amazing. I think one of the biggest things that we all sort of struggle with is that risk, right? Well, I can give you that, but then, I'm not sure that how far you'll go with that risk. And I remember talking to somebody when I first came to MITRE, the organization I'm in now, who had gone to the that agency as like a GS5 or something straight out of college. And I said, in the 70s. And I said, why did you go? I mean, like, it sounded like you had a lot of better jobs, at the bank or whatever. He goes, because I could do stuff there I couldn't do anywhere else in any other job. And it seems like over the last, 20, 30 years, for a number of different reasons, we've gotten so risk averse that it's hard to even sometimes do even the simple things. I had to go and I had to transfer some information the other day, and I had to go and I said it was the world's most expensive data transfer because I was given a CD. Then I had to go buy a thumb drive because the only person who had a CD player wasn't there in like the whole damn building. And so it turns out to be like a $300 thumb drive, right? Once I get all my time done with it. But these are the types of stuff that happen where we've put so many things in place to protect ourselves that we're also undermining our mission. And so one of the questions that came up was both for Doug or Brigham. I'll let you guys sort of hash it out as to who wants to answer first. Looking back at the situations, what are the signs that you missed? And what should you look for when you're over or under trusting? Who wants to take it first?
Doug, you want to go?
Sure. I think maybe in my case, it's an easy question to answer. Confidence is good. Overconfidence leads to blindness. And I was overconfident in myself and therefore blind to the level of confidence I needed to express in my team. And one thing that's really, really important that I think Brigham alluded to as well, if we don't show the confidence in our team, if we don't display that, if we don't specifically call it out in word and action, they won't believe it, and the customer or the mission beneficiary won't believe it. So it doesn't exist unless we say it. It doesn't exist unless we demonstrate it, and people can sense that right away. So like in your case, Brigham, your team stuck very specifically to what you specified, which of course was doing the right thing, but obviously they also felt on some level that you had kept them in that constraint for a reason. And maybe that wasn't even necessarily your intent. Maybe obviously you had ideas, you wanted to protect them, you wanted to be focused. Those are all good objectives, but it has an unintended consequence if you want them to feel a reasonable amount of mission flexibility to address other potentials that take place in the mission environment. And that's something that I think is very hard for us as leaders to do well.
Agreed. It's interesting. You know, the question you phrased, Brigadier, is what did we miss? Um, what I would say is worse than that. It's what I ignored. I thought as looking back, my subordinates, my youngsters, I call everybody who's ever served, you know, with me, under me, my kids. They're still they come here with my grandkids, you know, they bring their own children to my house. They're still, I love them all dearly. They mean the world to me. What I missed was, or what I chose to not think about, was all the positive signs they had already shown me that their judgment was sound and solid. And instead, I focused on the potential loss or the potential danger I was putting them into, and not the potential opportunities I was giving them. And I ignored that they had shown me all along a capacity for judgment and quick thinking, and in very good situations. Now, all along, of course, in the environments we're describing, is just over the few months, weeks we had worked together, I had not seen any reason not to trust them.
And that's a good point. Brigham, is Brigham just frozen?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Hopefully.
He wanted to emphasize that point so much, he just paused right there for effect.
Scotty, could you see if you can text him separately? Thanks.
Already have.
Scott is currently reanimating Brigham through a technology
No,
that's not even.
So Doug, I have a question for you. It's different from
Yes.
what I would ask Brigham.
Sure.
Was there ever a moment, either in reflection or in actuality, where you spoke to someone on your team and they said, I tried to tell you, or I was trying to show you that this was a challenge? Either that you realized it was a hint that was there, latent, or that someone had the heart to say to you, you know, hey, boss, I was trying to find a way to tell you we were headed this way. Was that ever present?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. From two directions. One from a member of the team who sort of served as the ringleader to come back to me and say, we were trying to tell you. And the other actually came from the sales rep who sold the software that we were then trying to implement. He came back to me and said, you completely fucked that up. What's wrong with you? You have this great team. Why'd you get in the way?
And what's your takeaway hearing that?
That my only qualification for being an entrepreneur is that I keep making all the mistakes that I need to learn from in order to actually be one. I'm only half kidding.
Someone should do that.
Right. I mean, what is my takeaway? You know, there's actually a bigger takeaway for me, which I'm actually working on as we speak. I tend to speak with such confidence that there's another problem that I create in my team, which is the assumption that Doug has the perfect plan and we should just wait for him to tell us that plan. And then I wonder why certain things don't get done. It's because they're still waiting for the perfect plan. There is no perfect plan. And I'm like, I want people to take initiative, but then they're left hanging, waiting for the more information that doesn't exist because they assume that I know. So I'm still working on this from a different perspective. At the time, the problem is I wasn't ready to trust the team. I didn't even realize that. I didn't think of it in those terms. Okay. Today, what I'm working on is, and by the way, don't mislead the team into thinking that there's this one perfect answer. So we have a new team member right now who, as he's onboarded, you know, we've had a couple of meetings where I'm like, how has progress on this going? And he was like, oh, I was waiting for this meeting to get more information from you because I sort of left the last meeting feeling like we'd only covered half of what you were thinking. And I want to make sure I do it the right way. And I realized I'm still screwing this up. No, go do the thing. It's never going to be perfect. There is no such thing. We'll figure it out from there, but I need you to iterate. I need you to take that risk.
So the follow-up question for both you and Brigham, because this is where it ties together for me, because I deal with this a lot, is the number one thing I'm looking for is judgment in an individual that I have to turn my back on, right? Judgment comes first. Lack of judgment takes us nowhere good. But the second thing, and I've yet to perfect this, is functioning and dealing in ambiguity. How did the two of you come to a conclusion about dealing with younger workforce that face ambiguity? Have you guys come to a place where you're reckoning? Because I think in both of your cases, there's some ambiguity that your junior forces had to cope with that they didn't. They ultimately decided, I'm not taking this to the boss. I'm stopping here, and I'm allowing the boss to continue the trajectory because this is ambiguous and I don't have a good way to deal with this. So what's your takeaway on ambiguity and working with workforces that have to manage that?
Brigham, you get to go first on this one. I'm
Thanks.
just spinning on it.
Thanks.
This is like therapy, Brigham, by the way. That's what everyone
Oh
says.
my
This is like
God.
therapy.
I need to
So
bring alcohol then.
I
Dr.
already
Rubin,
have a
if I
double in me.
could. So what, as long as I don't get, my text stays solid. Ambiguity. Okay. So we've discussed judgment and trust. And the fact is we all dealt with ambiguity when we were younger. We all dealt with it and we recognized it and faced it. And it's only as you get older, you become fearful of how others will deal with ambiguity. We do it every day. So I believe that what we need to, as you said, judgment is the critical element. And we've talked about faith and trust and confidence in our personnel. We have to understand that all humans navigate ambiguity. And if you believe they're going to confront it, then you need to write or convey your instructions, orders, goals in a way that gives people the latitude to deal with ambiguity, empower them to deal with that ambiguity. One of the greatest leaders in American history is General Grant, and we're fortunate he wrote his autobiography. And in there, he put some of his own written orders to his subordinates. And when you read those written orders, they are models of clarity of what he wishes to accomplish, while also giving the appropriate latitude to the subordinates on how to deal with developments not addressed in the orders. And he does that by setting goals, not by setting means and by not telling them how to accomplish what he wanted. He gives them a goal and an objective. He lets them know his own intent and then sets them on their way with the means to accomplish it. So the way I think you deal with ambiguity is by describing your essential goal and objective, and then giving your subordinates the means to accomplish those goals and objectives, and staying out of the way in how they finish that. When they need other means, they can ask for them. When they need other objectives by accomplishing the first, they can ask for it. But give them objectives, your intent, give them goals, and then the means to accomplish it, and get out of the way. Until, by the way, they prove they're not worthy of it. Let's also talk about underestimating the capacity for stupidity, the capacity for timidity. You're going to underestimate somebody the wrong way at some point, and they're not going to live up to what you believe they're capable of. Keep that in mind as well.
I want to loop back on that, but I want to hear what Doug says.
I think you've really hit upon something that, oh my gosh. So there's like a perfect storm of being a very focused and assertive and training oriented leader, and also inadvertently communicating that things have to be perfect or don't bother doing them at all. And when you do that with younger personnel, they will freeze. And unfreezing them is a very painful business, and it makes for a lot of emotional pain. So this is something that we're working at. One thing I learned is I can't be both of those people. So actually, as we've grown, we recently added an operations director whose job is basically to say, now that Doug gave the pep talk, this is what I want you to actually do. Okay. And what I want you to do is here's the information you need to do the mission, but then the rest is up to you. So when you're not sure how to do the next thing, it means go to effing Google and look at the F up and then come back with some suggestions. Okay. Like take it the rest of the way. All right. That's something that I realized I could not do on my own because I am a teacher by mindset and style. And so I'll always be like, oh yeah, let me show you. But if you show people everything, ironically, it disempowers them from actually learning it themselves. So I'm actually screwing up in the very process of doing what I think is empowering. I'm not saying don't provide training and instructions and SOPs. I'm saying the line between teaching and actually hand holding and then overtaking is so thin that you'll miss it. And I am notorious for doing that. So I got to get the hell out. Okay. And that's another key learning, I think, as a leader is you've got to be able to turn to somebody else and say, all right, that's all the instruction. There's no more. I could talk for 6 more hours, but I'm not. I'm out of here. Go make it happen.
Can I describe one thing that we risk when we do the underestimation? And that is you risk in the eyes of your subordinates, and by the way, in the eyes of your superiors at times, when your judgment is too flawed or so flawed that you underestimate their capabilities, they actually can come to resent that when they, and rightly so. If you don't empower them and you don't trust them or you don't believe that they're capable, while they have their own sense of self-worth and their own self-respect and their own ideas of, they were just trained, they were just, they're the ones who've got the latest learning. There's a line between arrogance and confidence, but you risk breaking that line between confidence and their own self-doubt, their own lack of confidence, if you don't show that in them. If you underestimate them, they begin to believe, oh, well, maybe I'm not really capable. Maybe I'm not the one that should be doing this. That's something tough to put on somebody. And you risk doing it when you underestimate them and don't give them the opportunity. You don't give them the means to achieve. And the whole organization loses out in that case. You lose out on someone who might possibly be one of your best performers.
It kind of reminds me. Oh, I'm sorry, Brigham. Yeah, go ahead.
No, not at all. Good. Keep going.
It reminds me of our arc with playground design. I think this is a perfect metaphor. So when those of us of a certain age went to the playground, we didn't think about it this way, but it was the place that you could seriously get hurt. And in fact, you usually had people in your peer group whose mission it was to make sure that you got hurt while you're on the playground. Okay. And then over time, playgrounds became more and more designed for safety and liability. And that's okay. Like, I'm not saying that was a bad thing. They became more designed and architected and, more interesting to us adults, perhaps, but actually a lot less interesting to kids. Okay. And now there's an arc of moving back toward creating less structured play and creating more danger or just letting kids explore, because we learned that by over organizing how they play, we've completely screwed up how they learn to manage in real life. Okay. And that's a metaphor that I try to think about all the time. If I'm over architecting the playground, they'll never learn how to do the damn thing. Okay, especially a generation that's been told that the definition of success in school and everything else is practice for the test. I mean, I've got a whole aside as a parent, how when I was in school, test prep guides and Cliff Notes were verboten. You could be flunked for even being caught once with any of those tools. And then when my kids went to high school, they were given those guides by their teachers because the goal was to ace the test. Nobody gave a shit about anything else. Okay. So that's what we're having to undo. We'd better be prepared to create more dangerous playgrounds, but that also means stuff's going to get screwed up. This is the part that I'm really struggling with, which is the risk tolerance. Okay. Not of necessarily trusting someone who I shouldn't trust, but of trusting someone who, like any normal human being, has to learn through trial and error. They're going to make mistakes. Customers are going to be pissed. But if I'm not willing to sacrifice a little bit of that, we'll never get anywhere.
I
So
want to
this is
thank
a-
Doug and Brigham for nailing my questions, because they both expressed exactly what the scariest part of leadership is. It isn't about taking a junior person and saying they're really great and then they don't screw up. It's about giving them that opportunity to be ambiguous and to fail and to learn and grow and to be there and watch it and not over manage it or over channel it. And they both expressed it to a T. I just did this last week at one of my sites, and it was incredibly nerve wracking to turn it over. I know I could do it, but I need them to do it. And they need to find the way, or I've got to do it all myself. So thank you guys for really driving that home.
Can I add, there was an
Go for it.
anecdote in the British Navy that they used to tell to show the flip side, which is the back in the age of sail when you had landing parties and things like that. Here we are, the captain sends out a landing party with a young lieutenant to go capture the enemy fort and silence the guns, and they're defeated, and they come back, and they're, the ship's not able to penetrate the harbor, and the captain, lieutenant, what went wrong, and lieutenant doesn't know exactly what to say, and so they withdraw, the ship withdraws, and they move on to the next mission, and the captain grabs the young lieutenant and says, now go execute this mission, go take that battery. We still have to penetrate this harbor. At some point, I need you to go. And that young lieutenant takes his landing party, and he not only captures that battery, he drives on, and the enemy is driven from the fort. And the lieutenant comes back, and the executive officer of the ship says, what was different this time? How did you manage to succeed here where you had failed earlier? And the young lieutenant says, the old man trusted me, and I couldn't let him down twice.
Wow.
And
So the
that's-
power of that trust, I think, is
Right.
important.
There's a show I've been watching. My friend turned me on to. It's called Ted Lasso. Has anybody else watched that?
Not yet, but everyone talks about it.
I've
You
seen
need to.
snippets, but I haven't watched the show yet. Only some of the skits.
It's a lot about leadership and trusting others, but also showing others that you identify something they may not even know about themselves. And I think if you want to be a really good leader, it's also helping people say, hey, I don't know if you knew this, but you are like a, I don't know, a great whisperer of all things, difficult client. And so I'm going to give you more opportunities to do this, and you tell other people about it too, so other people know their skills, because sometimes it takes a lot more time than we have to build that team awareness. That was a new thing that's coming out with McChrystal's book called Team of Teams, where we have this shared consciousness and shared awareness. And I think it used to be that we would bond better and have like drinks after at work or whatever and do that. We haven't been able to do that. So as we become leaders in our own spaces, helping people confidently act on some of that, but also telling other people like, hey, you should know this person's got really good eye for color, or hey, you know what, this person, if you ever need like help doing this, they're the person to go to. That's another way that we can help accelerate some of these things we're talking about, and also have a Ted Lasso show to really bet in there. So.
There you go.
I want to hear more confessions personally.
Brad, I wanted to do one from Brad. I asked Brad to sort of do a rewind because given his background, I always talk about him as being sort of a creative negotiator. And if there's a way to find new value, Brad does it. So Brad, what are your thoughts on some of this?
Well, Brigitte, I have a kind of a weird twist and perspective on all this, and Brigham and Doug, you're brilliant. It's a really amazing points. I have a little story to validate both of your situations, but both of the wisdom that you bring here. So I teach airplane flying. That's like, I own a flight school, and I teach people how to fly airplanes. So my criteria is if I don't teach them the right way, then they die in a fiery hole. And I have to explain to their parents what happened, or their children, or their grandchildren. My youngest student ever to solo was 16, and my oldest was 84. So I have every gender, every ethnicity, and every age that you can possibly have. And I've always been, and I've been trained as a flight instructor by the FAA, and understanding that learning is a change in behavior, and that learning is more of a drawing out than a putting in. You can bark orders at people all day, and if they just can't seem to land that plane, you just can't really get out of the plane, or they're going to die. I put them in situations on a regular basis where the worst situations ever. I flip the plane upside down and then pretend to take a nap. I put it in the fog and then say, oh, geez, I can't see anything. We should do something about this. Always with the hand right there to save the day so they don't kill us. So you have to have that. I have an 8-second rule. If you haven't started to at least change things in 8 seconds, I'll take over. And which worked really well until I flew with a 95-year-old guy who we were flying in really crazy winds. The wind was blowing 30 knots across the runway, and we had a little teeny plane. That plane is going all over the place. And I'm thinking, we really need to be turning towards the runway right now. The wing just dropped out of the sky, and I thought we were going to flip upside down. And so I corrected it because I did my 8 seconds. Okay, 8. And I started changing it. And he looks over at me and he goes, who the hell is flying this plane, me or you? I'm like, God right now, And so I'm like, Bill, I'm real
Neither
sorry.
of us.
And this is a guy who flew in the Berlin airlift. You know what I mean? This guy's been flying. He was commissioned in 1939. You know what I mean? It's like,
Wow.
he's flying, but it's like, hey, I get so. But to your point, so on the one hand, I have to kind of explain how to get the stuff done first. I explain it, then I see them do it, then I have them explain it. First I demonstrate it, and then I have them tell me what I did. Then I have them do it and have them explain it to me, and then I have so we see them all do it. But on the other hand, everybody processes information differently. And so, like, for instance, learning cross countries. I love to do this. This is a great one trick here. I play on them with cross country flights. They say, how do I fly? How do I plan a flight, a cross country flight? I said, well, just plan it. Here's a pencil. Here's some paper. And so this is your playground, right? Okay, do your best. And so they'll end up writing like 6 pages of a cross country that if you read it would take actually longer than the actual flight, right? And so they'll be reading it in here and who's flying the plane right now, because we're going the wrong way. And so then I say, well, okay, we're done with the flight. We debrief it, and it's like, all right, well, come back through and tell me the stuff. So by the time we're done, their cross country flight is a piece of paper that's like this big, because it actually has the germane stuff, the actual stuff they need to get from point A to point B. So anyway, but what you all said is just so amazing, and I live everything that you just said. So I don't know if that helps, but one thing that I found, and I'm curious about this, when you deal with and negotiation, I also teach at Penn State as a business teaching professor, entrepreneurship, and I teach negotiation. So I have kind of dual worlds that I live in. But in that place, a lot of times, especially when it comes with, and this is the question for both of you, when you codify, when you kind of stratify the people that are in your professional life, and what I mean by that is like, job by job, where do you ever stratify the people in terms of where they reside on kind of like a power and influence grid? Like they're very high power or low power. They're very high influence on what you do or low influence. And somewhere in there, they're in there. Like, do you ever like look at the people in your groups and then decide where they are in terms of your thing? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Doug, I'll take it first.
Go. Yep.
So the nice thing about my old line of work was, so every team, once upon a time, you come to realize that you have a team of people. Not everybody's a pitcher, not everybody's a catcher, not everybody's, a slugger. You've got to start to realize you have a team of people with various capabilities, capacities, and frankly, interests and initiatives and courage and levels of risk that they're willing to take or not. And it actually breaks down smaller teams. I love smaller teams because you can take a group of 10, 15 people and turn them into, razors that go out and do stuff. Doing that larger level, I start to lose the hands-on thing, and it doesn't work as well for me because I really like personal engagement with the people that I'm building. You realize that you have to at some point begin to say, okay, so and so can do this, but not that. I started to look at people in capacity first. Well, it's only been recently that I looked at, have you all heard of the 9 block, where it's potential versus performance, and where does that person fit into their, and I realized as I looked at that, that's what I had been doing. It wasn't a specific role anymore as the longer I looked at people, but rather where they could fit into being able to do anything I needed them to do in terms of potential, or were they someone I could rely upon? Were they someone that was the war horse, someone who probably was never going to be any more than what they were, but by the same token, I could count on them to do whatever it was in their particular area that I needed them to do. And in fact, they could teach that area. They could be a great mentor for people in that period. They had wisdom to offer in other areas, but they were never going to do, at some point, you're not going to be a Olympic gold medalist in the downhill. So that's how I started to look at things. And now with this framework of the 9 blocks, I've started to realize that's what I was putting people into without quantifying it. And now I use 9 blocks for my teams to give it sort of a more formal structure. But yeah, I think you have to stratify people and look at them, but I tend to look at them in terms of what's their potential to someday take my place. By the way, I also think the most important thing a leader does is look for their successor and develop that person to be their successor and give them that opportunity. Sorry, so I'll stop back now.
Right on. I mean, I'm going to take Brad's question a little bit different direction, that I think the two sides are complementary. The big thing that we're working on is not so much analyzing our team in terms of their influence or their power position. It's teaching them to create equality in their power position with the client. So, one of the things that we are challenged with every day is doing a good job is not the same as communicating that you did a good job. And if you don't tell the client, it didn't happen. And, I have people on the team who love to do and are really not, they don't naturally think I need to communicate it. They're like, well, I did all the stuff. It's done. It's obvious it's done. They could go and see. No, it's not obvious, because they're not going to go and see. That's what they're paying us to do. Okay. And so we've really been working on, like, what is the mindset of the client that establishes that they can rely on us. And I think this is actually maybe a really serious opportunity to develop younger employees, because when they realize, without being disrespectful or arrogant, I can communicate with someone twice my age and stature and with a title 27 levels above me, and they will take me seriously because I have demonstrated consistency and they're not worried about whether I'm going to follow through, then that's something that they can really get their arms around. So, like, that's our goal every week. Did we end the week with everyone on the client side of the table feeling that our team has followed through? And that means communicating the follow. It doesn't actually mean following through. It means communicating that you followed through. That's the follow through. Yeah, you got to do it. But the doing it isn't enough. It's not done until they know it's done. And in some cases, they may need to be told 5 different ways. We got one client, unless you text him about it, it doesn't exist. We have other clients that, need a video or need to have a Zoom meeting or need to have the firm, like, everybody's got different ways that they are comfortable checking things off their worry list. Understanding that is a really key component in developing power equality between the team and the client. So that's a lot of where we're going on the question of mapping power in an organization.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to depart. I hate to run and lecture and run. But Brigitte has my contact info, and I'm on LinkedIn. And please feel free to send me any questions or criticisms or critiques. And particularly if you have anything bad that you know about Scott that you want to share with me, I'd welcome that.
Well, before you can get to that, Brigham, I've got a lot of notes you're gonna have to look over, but you'll see that later.
I just want to hear more great stories from Brigham. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Brigham.
Thanks, Brigham.
So we don't need to wrap up now, but I do know Brad has to leave pretty soon too. One of the things that this sort of makes me think about a lot, you know, because I talk about why we started this group, and it was all about how we're changing the cultures in our own organizations. And a lot of times it is very hard to have that conversation back to your management about, hey, this is what we need to do. So from your perspectives, Doug, Brad, others, that, you know, how do we break some of these walls down, you know, and sort of enable better? What are some key takeaways that we should be doing that they can start allowing this to happen?
Brad, you get to go first on that one.
Now, can I help you, Brigitte? So what I think I'm hearing you say is, how do you break down walls of trust?
I think, yeah, trust and helping people sort of not underestimate themselves, or we stop overlooking them, I think is the big thing, so that we can deal with risk better, and also give people more room to grow. To use Doug's thing, how do we create environments where we have more playgrounds and less mulch, right?
Turn off the alarms. I'm serious. I don't mean to. Now I said, I'm sorry, Brad. Do you mind? I apologize.
Go, man, go.
You know, and I was thinking about the world of flight, because I actually sort of, as a side hobby of following, researching aviation accidents as management lessons. And it reminds me of, there was a case in Guam back in the 80s of a plane crashing into a mountain, and air traffic control knew that the ground proximity alarm had gone off and ignored it because it had always been wrong before. In fact, they taped the damn horn over because it went off all the frickin' time. And so then when it was like, you know, never cry wolf, right? And then it actually happened. The problem today is we get frickin' notifications from everywhere: Slack, email, the phone. And the trouble with notifications is, for those of us in leadership positions, we feel obligated to check and respond to every single one of them all the time. And what I've had to have, what my operations director has, I haven't had her do it, she's told me to do it. Frickin' ignore the notifications. If I don't bring it to you, it's not important. Shut the hell up and let the team do their job, and don't keep training them by your behavior that the moment they have a question, a problem, or a concern, all they have to do is at you and you'll respond. Get the hell out. And so that is a huge, and I'm not saying it's easy as I sit here staring at 73 notifications that I'm supposed to ignore, damn it. Okay. It's very hard. But if you don't, you end up being that air traffic controller who's so covered in alarms, they don't know what the hell to listen, and then they miss the important thing.
Doug,
so we got to turn off the alarms that we shouldn't be paying attention to. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brad.
I'll back you up on that. On the airplanes, we sometimes have students that become myopic. They get so stuck on one particular or several different instruments or alarms, as you would put it. And my response to that as a flight instructor is, if I see you looking at gauges and stuff, I have a little pack of yellow stickies, and I will take the yellow stickies and I'll put them over every single one of the gauges and dials and everything. And I say, just fly the damn plane.
Yes.
Because you don't need any of that stuff. If you want to fly a plane, and that, you know, that's the first thing. Oh gosh, his name just Kelsey, right?
Sully.
Sully, that's it. So it's the first thing he said after he's done is, my first flight instructor taught me how to do this. He taught me how to just fly the plane and land it in the river if I have to. And I do that with all of my students. I make them land in fields. You know, I turn off the engine all the time on them. It's like, well, now what are you going to do? You know, well, I wish I had a parachute. Well, you do have a parachute. It's called a pair of wings. It's the best parachute ever invented. But that goes to your, you know, just to follow just a little teeny bit here.
Yeah.
With confidence, you know, here you are with a student, and maybe put this in the back of your mind when you think of people that you're dealing with on a regular basis. Here you are with your flight student, your flight student, when you get out of the plane, you're like, all right, dude, you're ready to go. You're ready to fly this plane all by yourself. Now, not only do they have to believe that you know what you're talking about, they have to actually think that you care enough about them, that you care enough about them, and that you not only that, but know enough about them and what they're all about, that they're cool to go. Like that confidence level, Doug, that they walk away from, and they're like, oh shoot, I'm gonna do this, and off they go. And I'll tell you, the most satisfying thing as a teacher that I've ever experienced, and I've been flight instructing for about 20 years, is walking up to that student who has sold an airplane for the first time, cutting off the bottom of their shirt and giving them a big hug. And you now have walked away from a human being that is fundamentally 1000% a different human being than they were 5 minutes before. And it's amazing.
Freaking amazing.
Right.
Thank you, Brad. Guys, I have to go. I'm supposed to have a virtual doctor's appointment right now. I'll
All right.
see you guys. This was awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Bye
you,
bye, Doug.
And
Talk soon.
unfortunately, I have to go
You gotta
too.
go too.
I'm so
So-
sorry, Brigitte.
Oh, okay.
I wish
But
I
I
could stick
do,
around.
for some other people we have on here, I do want something to throw out there. One quick, Brad, if I could just do this one, because it's Zach and he is in your class.
Oh, Zach.
So he says that I feel like I need to answer every notification and I'm not in a leadership position, and maybe it's an occupational hazard when doing public relations. Do you think that's something like, is it a cultural thing, like, oh, I'm almost like a surgeon where everything's on fire, or is that something that we should go back and say, hey, you know what, let's figure out where the level of radar is, where I need to respond at 3 o'clock in the morning and I don't need to respond at 3 o'clock in the morning?
That's a great one, Brigitte. And one of my classes, my entrepreneurial mindset class, which is it's a 200 level class, but it has a whole section on how do you deal with that kind of thing. And I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey. I think Stephen Covey's 7 Habits are fantastic. And in fact, Mike Okren, am I saying your name right? And you had mentioned the power and influence grid that comes right out of that book. And that's what I was getting at when I was asking those guys the questions, seeing if they were gonna kind of describe that, organically. You gave it its name, and that's fine. But I was wondering if they had their own thing. But as far as the urgency, the urgency grid is something important or is something urgent. And in Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, there's this little grid thing that you can work on that's important versus urgent. Some things are very important but not urgent. Some things are very urgent but not important. And if you use that grid, and I actually use that on a regular basis, you can find that those fire alarms that are going off, a lot of them, they might be important, but maybe they're not urgent, or maybe they are urgent and they're not important, or maybe they're both. And so you've got to prioritize. It's like, and I hate to do this to you again, Brigitte, and Laura, you're probably going to shoot me and never ask me back, but I love John Boyd's OODA loop, because if you observe and you orient and you decide and you act, you can use that grid every single time, and you can use that cycle. And I live by it. I teach it in everything that I do, as you both know. And so I
Right.
promise not to mention it again tonight.
But it's everything that gets in the way between that, right? So
see what's going on, figure out how important this is, where it is on the grid, make a decision, execute, and then re-observe.
Right.
It
So,
really
Brad,
works. Yep.
So I guess that kind of really, I think it revolves around the Roosevelt matrix. But I guess my thing is, when do you approach the problem of ignoring notifications when they are assigned to you in a box? So if your manager assigns an important and urgent thing, although you deem it personally not urgent but important, how do you navigate around that?
And that's a great question, Zach. And again, then it comes down to, as we teach in the class, the interests. What are the interests of that particular individual? What really is important to that person? And then how important is that person to you, right? If you give me specific examples, unfortunately, I'm 5 minutes behind. I have people looking at me, cursing at me right now.
Maybe that's something we can discuss later on in
yeah, I'd be
class
more than
next
happy to
week.
go through these things. But yeah,
Right.
just think of their interests and how, are they really important to you as your boss? They're going to fire you. Okay, then they're very important to you, and they are very powerful to you. What are their true interests? And organize those in that urgency and importance grid, their interests.
And I think that is especially key. But I know that also that the way that they measure you sometimes can be very painful because it's very punitive.
Yeah.
And
speaking of power and influence, my wife, who might murder me in my sleep if I don't leave right now, is very important and urgent. I thank you very much for having me, and I'll see you all.
Brad.
Okay, bye everybody.
so it's Scotty, could you mute your mic? So for those of you that haven't figured out, my husband and I both share an office and we're face to face. It's 6:06. I know that everybody wants to sort of get to the rest of their happy hour, and I really appreciate you being here. We had about 22, 23 people in it, and I really learn a lot from these, and I hope you guys are getting something from them too. I always ask people to step up if they have things that they want to share. Coming up, we have our next topic is going to be in August, domino effect, which means started with one thing and then just kept going. And you guys, I do post these chats as well as a little thing on our meetup space and our space to fail on LinkedIn. And then I just stood up a Facebook page, f-upnights DC, but you don't have to be from DC to do it. You know, sort of mid-Atlantic, so you can see it there too. And that way you can share and do more of this communication that we've been doing. One of the things that I also am saying and telling everybody is this is a group of people that you're always looking, I'm always in recruit mode, and I'm always looking for people who always have like sort of my shared view of growing and developing. So as we go and you start to connect on LinkedIn or Facebook, this is a really good opportunity for you to get to know people that have skills that you may not have even realized that you could find in a space. So be open to that and be reaching out across the thing. So I'm going to step away. I want, if Laura has some time, she has to add anything else anybody wanted to add?
I think it was a fabulous conversation tonight and lots to think about. I think we got a lot of good resources too. So you can always post in the meetup if you have questions or you want to continue the conversation, as Brigitte said. So Facebook.
All right. I'll let you guys go then. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all the people coming back again, and we'll see you next month, I hope. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, save the chat here. All right, Laura, we're all good to go?